question. Have you published anything or written any petitions on surrogacy, or do you know of any that would be interesting?
I personally, no, I didn't publish or written any petitions because I don't really have a platform, but I start with the institutions who goes against with surrogacy and who kind of try to fight it. And the only institution here that you can really call on being powerful here concerning surrogacy is the church. That's the only occasion I think where I can really support what they're saying, because they observe the issue from the spiritual point of view, and they claiming that surrogacy traumatized both the bearing woman whose maternal feelings are violated, and the child who may be subsequently experience a crisis of self-awareness. We have some anarchist organizations that are against it, and some individuals who may be against surrogacy, or radical pro-lifers who believe that pregnancy can be done only one way, but not much. We don't much talk about this issue, even though that's a real big issue in Ukraine, and many people are unaware of what actually happens to mothers and kids. But with activation of the discussion recently during the quarantine, some radical anarchist organizations, those that I mentioned, started to speak about it. And one of them is Black Flag. I think they are more like the most popular here.
Object has a section on its website, which is Object UK. And I would refer listeners and panelists to our website, because we have quite an extensive amount written on surrogacy. We have a 10-point harm, which we would direct people to as well. Number one is the objectification of women's bodies. Number two is the dissociation and the split of the mind and body used also by women and girls who are abused, and women in prostitution and in the porn trade. In order to do what they do, they have to split. So in terms of the surrogacy, the split occurs when the mother tells you, well, it's not my baby. It's just using my body. I don't have any connection to this child, this baby that I'm carrying. So they have to dissociate. If you would think of a normal pregnancy of a woman who's pregnant, if she kept telling her midwife, I don't recognize this baby, I don't want, that people would think there was something wrong. But in surrogacy, it's perfectly normal for a woman to be forced and reinforced that that baby is not hers. It's a kind of brainwashing by the time the baby is born. Number three is the locus for the exploitation of poor women. As we know, globally, many women have been caught in the surrogacy business. So number three is that the exploitation of women globally on the surrogacy issue. Number four is that men are profiting. It's driven by the technology industry that FemRage acknowledged many years ago, when they got into the concerns of technology and its impact on women and their reproductive capabilities. And number five is that it's publicized as glamorous and altruistic self-sacrificing activity, which is quite dangerous. And in some instances, in poorer parts of the world, women's husbands have forced them into multiple surrogacy in order to build homes and houses and retain money in that way. I remember one man being asked why was he asking his wife to do that, and his response was, well, she's not fit for anything else, she might as well do that. Horrific responses. Also, surrogacy is about the right to have women traded in the sex industry, commodifying babies, a product or a service, as I've mentioned before. No one seems to know what that means. Reinforces sex roles, the notion that even when dressed up as noble and glamorous, it's only women who actually can perform this surrogacy business. The physical harm, there's little care apparently in regards to women's health and safety. You know, way people talk about pregnancy as if it's just a normal natural process, which of course it is, but it is fraught with dangers and difficulties. And quite often in this altruistic model, that's put to one side. The psychological harm as well as the physical harm, the post-traumatic stress disorders that women talk about in many of the researchers that I've already referred to, the grief, the depression. And also the last one is the barrier to women's liberation. The industry like the sex trade and the porn have a detrimental impact on women, as both for them and in general. So surrogacy also has a detrimental effect on women in general, in terms of it reinforces women's worth as service providers to men and captured society where abuse and women's rights to bodily autonomy is the norm, whereas radical feminists, we believe that women have 100% supreme right over their own bodies. Also, the Law Commission, we contributed to the Law Commission surrogacy project. The Law Commission is an organization in Great Britain that reviews the laws that are currently on the statutes, and they're now in the process of reviewing the law. Myself and a colleague, Anna, who is a scientist, by the way, we contributed to the consultation via Object. We did a lot of work to put forward the idea that, you know, children have a right to know who their parentage is, and women have a right not to be exploited. And in the end, we were saying that we don't approve and we don't agree that surrogacy is something that they should be supporting. But my understanding is that they are going ahead with the reforms, which is going to make it easier for buyers of babies to take babies immediately they're born in the UK. The other reason they want to do it is to stop transnational surrogacy, so that more and more surrogacy takes place in this country where it can be controlled, and the money cycle can keep going around with the agencies and the medics and everyone else that's involved.
We have published a book so far called For the Respect of Children and Women, Abolishing Surrogacy, but it's only in French. But right now, we are also going to publish a new book on surrogacy in English, Spanish, and French, with something like 30 different contributions. And the call for contribution is still on. The deadline is September, so please, you are welcome to send us a contribution. I will give you the link. Apart from that, we are spending a lot of time campaigning against surrogacy, or to put it right, for a worldwide ban on surrogacy. Here are a few examples of the campaign to raise public awareness. Better life, yes, but without surrogacy. The aim was to confront the production of the TV series called Plus belle la vie in French, Better Life in English. It was broadcasted on the French national channel, and we confronted and we campaigned because this TV series was really biased in favor of surrogacy. A second campaign was called for LGBT Pride Day, free of exploitation. This campaign was launched by a Spanish organization, which is a member of the coalition. And with this campaign, we were very happy to identify lesbians and LGBT organizations having taken a stand against surrogacy in Italy, Austria, and Spain. Recently, we also reacted about the surrogacy babies stranded in Ukraine because of the lockdown. And we did that with a Spanish organization, with the Italian organization, Marina, and also then we spread the campaign with the Austria organization and with the Swedish organization. Then we did different campaigns. And recently, yes, with the Spanish organization, we are in action. Again, in this Ukraine case, something very important is to act at a political level. We try, as a coalition, to introduce an abolitionist point of view in every international or European bodies. The United Nations, the Hague Conference on Private Law, the European Parliament, but I must say it is very difficult because of the lobby in favor of surrogacy. It's a lobby, a very, it's as object, as Laila said, it's a very, very powerful lobby. And what we are fighting really, it's a new market.
We know that women who sell eggs have serious dangers in their health, and so do pregnant women whose pregnancy are often at the risk of various pathologies and often end up with cesarean section. The hormonal therapies they undergo for these processes can also have long-term consequences. By now, many studies show this. In recent pediatric oncology conferences, one of the last took place in Lyon, these topics were discussed. The Istituto of Tumori di Milano, which is one of the most important hospitals in Europe for treatment of cancer, has introduced the question on the modalities of conception in the anamnesis sheet of young cancer patients. Conception patient, also because the marketing of the agency, on the contrary, promise healthier and more beautiful children than those naturally conceived.